Welcome to another episode of Code Breakers, the podcast that empowers you to overcome life's challenges and tap into your full potential. I'm Sam, your host. Today, we're following up on last week's episode where I shared a bit about my personal complex PTSD healing journey while also working for Amazon. I want to continue that conversation while shifting the focus to lessons learned and share some tips and advice for friends, family members, colleagues, peers, and of course, leaders who are interested in how to recognize and respond to folks who might be struggling with PTSD. And I believe that all of these tips are actually quite beneficial for anyone and everyone balancing high stress jobs, life, and leadership. So let's start with some facts and data. There are currently 12 million people in the United States alone living with PTSD. Now, only a portion of those who experience trauma, which is most everyone, will actually go on to develop PTSD, okay? And the definition of PTSD, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, I can't believe that this is the first time I'm referencing this on here, but it says that PTSD can develop after exposure to a potentially traumatic event that is beyond a typical stressor. We talked about that the experience just has to be beyond someone's ability to cope with it at the time. So then it says events that may lead to PTSD include, but are not limited to, violent personal assaults, natural or human caused disasters, accidents, combat, and any other form of violence. But now, see, listen to this. It also says that exposure to events like these is very common. About half of all US adults, so 170 million people or so, will experience at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. But most, thankfully, do not develop PTSD. So, why am I talking about it then? Well, for a couple of reasons, honestly. One is to spread awareness. 12 million people is a lot of people. But if you consider that each of those individuals has a group of friends and family that care for them, plus anyone else that they may acquaint themselves with through home, work, or life in general, is probably, let's say, 5 to 10 on average. So let's say there are anywhere from 12 to 24 to 60 to 120 million people that are affected in some way by PTSD, whether it's you yourself or a loved one. What's the difference between someone who develops PTSD and someone who doesn't? I have my own theories, like the nature of our core relationships with our parents and our earliest lived experiences, repetition or repeated exposure to overwhelming events, but that's an obviously biased opinion. I did a little bit of research, and it turns out that experiencing multiple traumas can increase the risk of developing PTSD, as does the type of trauma, biological factors, a genetic predisposition, the coping mechanisms we adopt, and our internal levels of resilience. Those can all play a role. While having a dedicated support system and access to healthcare for early intervention and treatment following a traumatic event can reduce the likelihood of developing PTSD. Events that involve a threat to life, serious injury, or sexual assault are more likely to result in PTSD. But remember that trauma and trauma responses are on a continuum, as is the human experience. So, the way an individual perceives and interprets the traumatic event can also influence the development of PTSD. A perceived sense of control or lack thereof during the event and the meaning that gets attributed to that can also affect the development of PTSD or not. At least it did for me. Social support can also buffer the impact of trauma and contribute to increased resilience. And timely treatment, like I mentioned earlier, can help people process the experience and develop effective coping strategies while reducing the likelihood of developing PTSD and minimizing the longevity of any symptoms that do come up. So, how do you tell if someone is on the verge of developing PTSD after a specific experience? Or how can you tell if someone is exhibiting the symptoms of PTSD without invading their privacy? First of all, approaching a close friend or relative or spouse should be handled very differently than professional scenarios. Recognizing whether someone is on the verge of developing PTSD or is exhibiting symptoms can be challenging. So, here are just a few general signs that someone might be struggling with their mental health. Just keep in mind that these signs don't necessarily confirm the presence of PTSD, and only a mental health professional can provide an accurate diagnosis. And also, just one more quick reminder, I'm not a trained or licensed therapist. I am here to share my lived experience and what I've learned along the way. PTSD is a complex condition, so risk factors and the manifestation of PTSD symptoms will be unique to every individual. People who experience PTSD usually have persistent, upsetting thoughts and memories of the event or events that they experienced. They might have sleep problems, they may feel detached or numb, or they may be easily startled. Again, not everyone exposed to trauma develops PTSD. A lot of people are able to draw on support from their community and their internal resilience to quickly recover without long term psychological effects. Understanding these nuances, though, can give you the awareness and knowledge to better support and intervene for others who may be at risk. So, some signs someone may be struggling. Noticeable changes in daily behavior, increased irritability or a significant decrease in motivation, frequent displays of intense emotions like anger, sadness, or anxiety that just seem disproportionate to the situation, changes in sleep patterns, either insomnia and not being able to sleep, or oversleeping, or even having recurrent nightmares. Again, being easily startled and having difficulty concentrating and exhibiting other signs of hypervigilance or hyperarousal, withdrawing from friends, family, other social activities. They may have intrusive memories, flashbacks, distressing thoughts related to the event. Now, that one's a little bit harder to observe independently, and then that brain body connection again. They might also experience unexplained physical symptoms. Common ones include headaches, stomach aches, or other stress related physical manifestations like tension, pain, pressure somewhere in the body. If you begin to recognize any of these things in a loved one, a friend, or even a coworker, there are several ways you can provide support. On a personal level, use your discernment on the best way to approach the people you love and care about. You know them much better than anyone else. However, in general, it may be helpful to intentionally request time to discuss, then find a comfortable and familiar environment where the person that you're concerned about feels safe, they can feel at ease, and just start by expressing your observations, your care for them, and that you want to provide support and understanding in whatever capacity you can. And ask them what that might look like for them. What do they want? What do they need? Encourage them to talk about anything that they're comfortable discussing. Respect their process and their pace. Share that you are there for them and willing to listen without judgment. Ask them what might be helpful. What do they feel like they need in this moment? Emphasize the strength and resilience you've witnessed in them. Remind them that they are loved and worthy and capable, and reinforce that seeking help is a brave decision and not a sign of weakness. Ask if they've considered seeking professional therapy or counseling, and if appropriate, and if you're able to, maybe consider offering assistance with practical things that may be overwhelming for them, like finding a therapist or going with them to appointments or providing support with daily tasks and just rearranging some responsibilities, even if it's temporary or for a brief period of time. Now, in a professional setting, there are going to be different nuances and legalities to be aware of. It's crucial to understand that asking about someone's mental health, including inquiries about disabilities, is illegal during the recruitment and interview process. So, beyond that, when someone has been hired and is an active employee, if you have concerns, it is essential to be cognizant of the questions that you pose and the motivation behind them. And you need to ensure that you adhere to anti discrimination and any other applicable laws. Any inquiries into someone's mental health should be approached with extreme sensitivity. If an employee discloses information about their mental health voluntarily, it should be handled with confidentiality and a strong emphasis on providing them with the appropriate support. Refrain from asking more probing questions like, "What happened to you?" That's incredibly invasive and unlikely to be relevant to you being able to give them support. I'm going to break this down a bit further beyond just personal and professional. How you approach someone at work that you think might be struggling with mental health is clearly a sensitive situation. But if you think it's appropriate for you to engage and if your heart is in the right place, then your approach will still differ, or it should, depending on whether you're their peer and you have or have not built a friendship or closer personal type connection than if you are their leader, for example. And if you don't know someone very well, okay, hold on, I have to say this. Please stop making light of PTSD at work to explain or make jokes out of how difficult a project or a meeting or whatever was. It is completely invisible. PTSD is completely invisible. You have no idea who's in the room with you that may be actually struggling or has struggled with PTSD. And quite frankly, you kind of look like an ass. So I promise you, this isn't a rare occurrence. If you've done it before, you're not alone, but maybe consider removing it from your collection of work bonding tactics. So, anyway, if you don't have the relationship to approach somebody about this sensitive of a topic, I would advise probably not mentioning anything beyond, "How are you doing? You seem like something may be bothering you. Is there anything I can do to help?" If you're a peer and you're raising your eyebrow a little bit because someone missed a deadline, they're engaging less, they're getting short with people more frequently, or you've just noticed other changes in their demeanor, and you aren't super confident that you have the relational capital to engage with them beyond, the "how you doing, is something up?" or maybe even "no, really, how are you?" then I would stick to asking questions related to work. What are they working on? What's going well? What isn't? Where do they need help? And if you listen closely, you'll definitely find some answers. They may even willingly divulge more information that you can prepare to respond to compassionately and empathetically. Regardless, these types of conversations can help you help them in a number of ways through advocating for or sharing resources and information, or you may be able to provide suggestions based on your own related experiences. But what you probably don't even realize is how beneficial these types of conversations truly are. It doesn't take more than 15 to 30 minutes, yet they help immensely. Connection helps immensely. Feeling seen and like someone has your back goes a long way to giving PTSD survivors and anyone else struggling with their mental health the support and space and some extra capacity to process, resolve, and heal whatever they're struggling with at the time. As a leader, if you're growing concerned about someone on your team, the same logic applies. Be aware of the legal aspects, which hopefully, if you're in a leadership position, you already are. Starting the conversation with a focus on work related matters or challenges and what is needed to break down those barriers is a good, safe place to start for everybody. But if you're considering having a more in depth conversation with them about it, again, I'm going to recommend that you check your motivations and take time to think through the purpose and the goal of the conversation. Then, when you're ready to approach them, maintain professionalism, assume positive intent, find a quiet, private space for the conversation to occur to ensure confidentiality and minimize any interruptions. Start by expressing genuine concern for their well being. These are people at the end of the day, and that should be your primary focal point. So let them know in a caring, compassionate way that you've noticed changes and are there to support them. Avoid prying into personal details. If they want to share, they will. And focus on just how the workplace can provide support, how you can provide support. Provide any information about the available resources that exist, like employee assistance programs or mental health support services, and make it clear that seeking help is encouraged and supported, and if appropriate, suggest engaging the human resources department just to ensure that they have access to necessary accommodations and any additional support that they may want or need. You may have noticed I recommended asking a lot of questions. What is needed? What support may be helpful? What's working? What isn't? What's going on in life, in this project, etc. And this is because I have learned that keeping an open mind, not making assumptions, and asking clarifying questions leads to conversations and outcomes that I usually couldn't have predicted on my own. This approach is actually called appreciative inquiry, and it's a strengths based approach to both organizational and personal development. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, using a combination of collaborative, strengths based, positively framed engagements, questions, conversations. The idea is that you can use questions framed in a certain way to explore new ideas, different perspectives, and new possibilities, while also identifying and amplifying the positive aspects and the things that are going well or that this individual does well to help facilitate and encourage growth and positive change. So instead of asking targeted questions that may cause someone to throw up their defenses, like, what's wrong with you? What's going on with this project? Why haven't you done XYZ? Very accusatory. You can ask things like the open ended questions I mentioned earlier to initiate the conversation on a much more considerate and trustworthy foundation in a way that truly communicates that you care about the individual on the other side of this conversation and that you're honestly there to help in any way you can. Then, when there's a high degree of relational capital, relational trust, you might be able to ask questions like, can you think of any specific habits or behaviors that might be hindering your progress? Or what positive aspects of your current approach can we build on? This progression is intentional. It ensures that the conversation remains supportive and conducive to growth. Again, all of this is for the purpose of shifting focus and moving away from the negative aspects, the problems, the deficits, the cycle of excuses, to a mindset that is encouraged, resilient, and capable of seeing the possibilities for positive change and personal growth. Now, if you're on the receiving end of this type of conversation, know that if people are coming to you in this way, it's because they care about you and they care about your well being. They see your pain, they recognize your suffering, and they're extending a lifeline that says, look, I care about you so much that I'm going to try to work through this with you. So I know your mind and body are screaming, danger, danger, but for a moment, consider that this conversation is an opportunity and not a threat. It is a chance to explore new perspectives and work together with somebody who truly cares about you towards positive, life altering changes. And while it may feel uncomfortable, it is a true testament to the care and concern those around you have for your health and well being. So approach this moment with openness, acknowledge the support being offered, and do your very best to shift the focus from me versus you and assuming that that's their approach to an us versus the problem perspective so that you can work together to cultivate a path towards growth and resilience for everyone. So, dealing with these conversations personally and professionally would generally be and should be very different. When it comes to your personal life, it's crucial to recognize and respect your boundaries and protect your privacy. You have the right to control the information you share and the pace at which you share it. The same thing applies in a professional context, but you should also be mindful of your rights within the workplace. Understand the company's policies regarding mental health and privacy. And again, consider involving HR if you want or need, because your well being is paramount. And your comfort and consent in sharing personal information should always take precedence. Always trust your instincts. As diversity, equity, and inclusion has evolved over the years, I have a special place in my heart for the organizations, teams, and communities who operate with a desire to build belonging into their culture. When DEI and belonging are pivotal parts of the way you approach business, you not only provide psychological safety, but you also foster innovation, creativity, and collaboration. Inclusive environments bring together diverse perspectives, sparking new ideas and solutions that might not emerge in a more homogeneous environment. Perhaps more importantly, by embracing a culture of belonging, you empower individuals to show up authentically, which cultivates a sense of purpose and commitment that transcends conventional work boundaries. This not only leads to enhanced employee satisfaction, but it fuels organizational and personal growth. As individuals and as a secondary byproduct, teams become more resilient, adaptable, and capable of achieving collective success. The benefits then extend far beyond the workplace, contributing to a broader societal shift towards understanding, respect, and appreciation for the diverse nature of human experiences and our unique strengths and perspectives. So, a point of clarification, I'm not suggesting we should or need to worry about catering to any one person or demographic. Rather, if you are or aspire to be a leader, your motivation and your approach are hopefully informed by a bigger picture understanding of the interconnectedness of life and work, personal and professional, and the very real fact that your role as a leader has an impact on each of those elements. So instead of worrying about one individual, you can and should focus on creating an environment that is psychologically safe and fosters belonging for every unique human being. But how? Well, one powerful approach to create an inclusive and thriving environment is by adopting servant and transformational leadership principles. Embracing this leadership style means recognizing that your role extends beyond traditional managerial responsibilities. It involves understanding that your primary duty as a leader is to support and uplift those around you. With servant leadership, your responsibility as a leader is to your people first and the mission second. Incorporating transformational leadership principles emphasizes your dedication to promoting positive change and growth. This mindset places the well being, development, and fulfillment of your team members as the essential foundation upon which any organizational or team success is going to be built upon. In essence, this is a paradigm shift where your leadership becomes a catalyst for empowerment, resilience, and collective achievement, with the mission seamlessly aligning as a natural outcome of a thriving and supported team. So again, I'm always going to call this out. We, yes, of course, have a responsibility to own our healing. But seeing as how we live in the world we do, I also believe corporations, organizations, and leaders of all kinds have a responsibility to recognize employees as people with feelings, emotions, and complex brains, and treat people, employees, with the humanity we all deserve. And every one of us in a leadership position, formal or informal, because both exist, needs to recognize the power you have to shape the experiences of those around you. People will forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Do you want to be remembered for upholding the systems that encourage the separation of people and profits? Or are you going to lead with more integrity, be the loud one, be the difficult one, the one that doesn't accept the status quo? It's not that hard to be a rebel these days. There's a lot of power in the way you approach leading your team. How you show up for them matters. The words you say matter. Your ability to maintain composure when things get stressful matters. And on the flip side of that, if you don't have the emotional intelligence and wherewithal to deal with the demands of life, business, and treating people well, and you can't find the desire to begin learning, well, then maybe you should be asking yourself if you really belong in leadership in the first place. Remember, although most everyone experiences some level of trauma, not everyone gets PTSD. But through the shared experience of life, our own personal healing, and our own personal development and awakening, we can approach others who aren't so lucky and are still going through some of their hardest battles with care, compassion, empathy, and space to recover. Healing from PTSD is not an easy feat, but it is possible. Your journey is unique, and it's okay to take the time that you need to heal and thrive in both your personal and professional life. For those of you watching your loved ones struggle, I know you wish you could just take all their pain away and let them see themselves and the world through your eyes. But honestly, one of the absolute best things you can do is just be patient and recognize that this is a non-linear process. So take care of yourself too. Plan for the future. Remind them how strong and capable they are. Celebrate the wins, the good moments, the good days. Make sure to enjoy the small things and look for those glimmers everywhere. And just keep taking it one step, one day at a time. Healing is possible. Joy is possible. Life after PTSD is possible. Thank you for joining me today. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a review if you're enjoying this podcast. I appreciate your support and wish you the best on your journey. Until next time, remember, you have the power to break your own code and rewrite your story. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time.